Hello, everybody, and welcome to Expert Examiner IELTS, another live stream. I believe this is my third or fourth live stream. I do apologize that we're a little bit late. Azamat just had a couple of minor tech issues, so you can kind of see that Azamat is there in the top right corner, but there's like a doppelganger, a special Azamat in the bottom. He's using one for the camera and one for the microphone, so an amazing workaround. First of all, I just want to, many of you are probably from Uzbekistan and you might already be familiar with Azamat. He has a Telegram channel called IELTS. Azamat, do you want to say hello and just tell us something about your role as a leader of a Telegram channel?
Well, yeah. First of all, thank you for inviting me. I'm Azamat Nurmatov, and I work in a language center as an IELTS instructor and English teacher. I guess it's been more than 3.5 years since I've been in this field. And so I probably established the channel when I got, kind of 7.5 or something like this. And then since then, I've been posting some essays, speaking samples, and so on.
So yeah, you said you post like essays and speaking samples. Like I know that there's a lot of people in Uzbekistan doing this right now. Do you have any, like, are you a part of any other channel? Are there any like gurus in Uzbekistan IELTS that you follow?
Yes, there are a number of gurus that I follow, and they are my colleagues. So, well, actually, I've got two friends who run, a channel together. Their channel is called IELTS Shares. One is Niner, and one is 8.5 holder, like me. And then there are other colleagues of mine who run their channels, on a constant basis.
Okay, I have some questions. I have questions a lot about like IELTS in Uzbekistan because for me it's fascinating. And a friend of mine was examining in IDP in Tashkent, and he mentioned some interesting things about like the status of IELTS. We'll get to this a little bit later. Of course, your purpose for being on here, a couple of things. We're going to go through a speaking test, as you know, and the purpose of this is just to introduce you to my audience, because on Saturday, you, me, and Brick from How to IELTS, we're going to have a live stream and we're going to test a couple of random people. Before we start our test, I just want to, just while we're waiting for some more viewers to join, I just want to ask the viewers if they have any burning questions for me before we get into it. Now, there is a little bit of a delay between StreamYard and YouTube, so it might take a little bit of time for some of those questions to come in. If you do have a question, type it in. I'll answer as many questions as I can in about 5 minutes, and then we'll start our speaking test. First of all, we have something from Living Paradise who says, "My teacher." Is that one of your students?
Well, to be honest, I have no idea by the profile photo and name. But yeah, I guess she's my student.
Okay. Well, she's replied with some fire. Yeah. So somebody is saying, Glyn, oh, Zia PUBG leaves a lot of strange messages, I must say, telling me to put my microphone closer to my mouth. Is my microphone level low? Because I can turn it up, I guess.
I mean, that's okay. I guess
Yeah.
it's like I can hear you clearly.
Okay, I'm gonna just check my microphone. But mic settings seem to be high. Oh, Ali Diab says it's perfect. So sorry, Z1YA PUBG. You'll have to deal with it. Question here, how can I improve my speaking? This is such a broad question. And when I get this question, how can I improve my speaking? I often think like this is not a serious student when they're coming to a YouTube live stream saying, how can I improve my speaking? Now, we know the things that improve your speaking are practice, grammar, vocabulary, having a teacher that gives you like functional language, things like that, right? How can I improve my speaking? How can I improve my swimming? How can I improve my rock climbing? How can I improve my knowledge of geography? Well, there are a million videos out there talking about how you can improve your speaking. You can ask ChatGPT, but yeah, it's grammar, it's vocab, it's pronunciation, it's fluency, it's practice, practice, practice. So yeah, you'll have to be more specific, Rahmat Diolo, other than how do I improve my speaking. There is a question from Shorux. What's the main goal with this chat? Just mostly the goal is to give a speaking test to Azamat, just to show you guys who Azamat is, because on Saturday we're going to do a live stream with some either some of my viewers or some of Brick's viewers or some of Azamat's viewers. We haven't decided who it's going to be. We're going to pick them live. Oh, this is an interesting question. Inquiry on results. Now, this is an administrative question, and I have absolutely no idea. Now, I don't even know what EOR is, right? Because like the examining and administering are two totally different things. Azmat, have you ever heard of EOR and inquiry on results?
Well, yeah, it's like when you are dissatisfied with your result, you can actually inquire, and they're gonna be another examiner checking your writing or speaking once again, and they tell us that new examiners are going to be senior examiners, and they don't know your score. It's like your previous score, and then they'll score whatever your writing or speaking deserves.
I see. So yeah, like in any organization, right? You have different hierarchies, and most places have like examiners, and then they have some like quality assurance check, and then they have senior examiners. So usually, if the senior examiner, when the senior examiner checks the score for the speaking or the writing, if the original examiner is within 0.5 bands of the senior examiner, then that's considered to be, okay, that the examiner did their job. There is always a subjective element to checking writing and speaking. Always. Two examiners or three examiners, it's very possible that they'll have slightly different marks. But inquiry on results, how it works and how long you have to wait and so on, that's something you just have to check with the test center. As an examiner, it's totally out of my sphere of expertise. I'll just take maybe one more question. Now, if I don't answer your question, guys, don't worry. There will be an opportunity to ask more questions at the end. I'm just going to pick, let's see. How can IELTS candidates maximize their scores with least amount of study time? Again, for me, this is a question that shows maybe you're not the most serious. Why does it have to be the least amount of study time? I'm a big believer that if you want to do something, you should do it the right way. Doing it the right way usually takes a bit of time. Azamat, how can IELTS candidates maximize their scores with the least amount of study time?
It's like they have to stick to the advice of their teachers. That's it. And Muslim Ibrahim is my student. I know him.
Yeah, do your homework, Muslim Beck. Do your
Yes.
homework. Yeah. All right. So we're going to get into, because Shah Jahan, I've had a Shah Jahan on the channel before. I don't know if it's this guy, but guys, come on. It's not a QA session here. Let them start, says Shah Jahan. So we're going to get into our speaking test. Of course, you know about the format of the speaking test, right, Azamat?
Yes.
Cool. Now, I will be taking notes during this test, and when I take these notes, don't worry, it doesn't necessarily mean that you've done something wrong. Ignore me if you see me writing something down. We'll go through the test from start to finish. I will ask audience, I will ask you to give your scores for Azamat's performance, and I'd like to compare your marks with my marks. But yeah, shall we begin?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Glyn. Would you please tell me your full name?
Good afternoon. My full name is Azamat Normat.
And what should I call you?
Just by my name, Azamat.
Okay, thank you, Azamat. Now, in this first part of the test, I'm going to ask you some questions about yourself. Do you work or do you study?
Actually, I do both. Well, a minute. So that's okay.
Welcome to the live.
Um,
Let me
yeah,
repeat the question. Do you work
okay.
or do you study?
I do both. I'm a junior student at Bridge Management University, located in Tashkent, majoring in international accounting and finance. And in the afternoon, I go to my work, and I've been working as an English teacher for more than 3 years.
And what do you like most about your job?
Hmm, that's a very interesting question, I would say. There are a number of things that I find really enjoyable, but the most, favorite one is probably seeing my students' eyes shining brightly while they are learning, and making my classes as engaged as I can. So these are the things that I find really enjoyable.
And is there anything you don't like about your job?
Well, there is no particular there is no particular type of thing that I dislike with my job, but I would say I kind of, you know, let's say, hate when my students come late and without their homework. But other than that, everything is literally perfect.
Let's move on now and talk about your childhood. Did you enjoy your childhood?
Well, yeah, I've had a carefree childhood, and I've been given an opportunity to explore a lot of things, to explore, my neighborhood, even though it wasn't an affluent neighborhood. I guess that was really great. Yeah.
And how did you spend your free time as a child?
Hmm. Well, as a normal kid in Uzbekistan, I tended to play with my, neighbors, with my friends a lot. We used to play football for the most of the time. We even played football with girls and got some, unforgettable memories from my childhood.
And what was your favorite place to go to in your childhood?
Ah, well, that was my friend's house. Whenever, we got some dirt on our clothes, we were afraid to go home. It was that dirt, because our moms would punish us. So it's like, as a little kid, we were really afraid. And then, to avoid this, we usually used to go to my friend's house, got some water, washed off the dirt, and then, went back like as nothing had happened.
Let's move on now and talk about gifts or presents. Do you prefer giving or receiving gifts?
Um, Both, I guess. It's like giving and receiving gifts must be a pleasurable activity, or let's say, yeah, it must give pleasure, I believe.
And what kind of gifts do you like to receive?
Hmm. Well, I should say that I'm not into, receiving prohibitively expensive gifts. It's like, as they say, I mean, people say it is attention rather than the value, right? It's like, so it is the person who is giving that attention, and it is that attention that makes you feel special.
And have you ever got a gift that you didn't like very much?
Oh, well, yeah. I once received a book. I guess that book was, self-improvement book or something like this. And the name was How to Become a Millionaire or something like this, right? So it's like, I think those kind of motivational books are nonsense. And I believe that when you are receiving such a gift, right? The person who is giving that gift to you thinks that you aren't a millionaire, right? Or thinks that you fail to reach that level.
Okay, thank you. Now, in this next part of the test, I'm going to give you a topic, and I would like you to speak about this topic for 1 to 2 minutes. But before that, you will have 1 minute to prepare for your talk, and you may take notes if you wish. Do you understand?
Yes.
Mhm. I will now share the topic on my screen. Can you see the topic?
Yes.
I'd like you to describe a book that had a significant impact on you. Your
Hmm.
1 minute of preparation time starts now.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the end of your preparation time. To remind you, you will have between 1 and 2 minutes to give your talk, and I will let you know when the time is up. Can you start speaking now, please?
Yes. So before delving into the topic, I should probably say that I'm not into reading a lot of books. I mean, I'm not into reading books much, but I've been. I mean, I've read, I guess, a couple of books, and I'm gonna talk about one particular one, and that was written by a famous Uzbek novelist, Abdullah Qadri, and the name of the book is Otkan Kullar in Uzbek, and in English that's Bygone Days. So the book actually covers historical, political aspects of Central Asia in in the early 1920s. It's like it was after the First World War and before the Second World War. At the same time, the writer clearly highlights the romantic relationship between, the main characters of the book. So it's like showing some real great details. And I first saw the film on TV when I was just randomly scrolling down the channels. I found that film particularly fascinating, and then got really interested, and then decided to read its book. So when I read that book, I was literally engrossed in a book. I was literally living in that period, living with the main character, and kind of got some reason towards those immoral acts of the enemies of the main character. And at the same time, I felt in love with the way the writer wrote the novel. It was in old Uzbek.
Okay, thank you.
That's
Thank you. Okay, So you've been talking about a book that's had an impact on you. Let's talk about books in general now. Firstly, why do you think people read books?
Well, I think the main reason why people read books is like getting information. It's like exploring things, exploring novelties when they have free time. For example, when you read about psychology, so you definitely learn, get to know some new things about psychology, how to manipulate people, for example, and stuff like that. So, and another reason why people might read books might be, just for their university assignments, as we do in my university, for example. We are literally forced to read, you know, particular materials.
Let's talk about novels. In what way is reading a novel different to watching a film?
Well, when you watch the film, you don't have to, visualize. So it's like your vision isn't going to work. You'll be, watching it and that's it. But when you read the book, you gotta visualize it on your own. Visualize the situation, the place, everything, and then at the same time you gotta feel the feelings, feel the emotions, roller coaster of emotions or bittersweet, doesn't really matter. So you gotta feel those emotions on your own. Whereas on films, those emotions are mostly shown by the actors and actresses.
And do you think ebooks will replace physical books in the future?
Well, although ebooks are gaining much popularity, I don't really think so. I mean, I don't think that ebooks will eventually replace physical books. It's like paper books have always been in use, and they have no harm for the eyesight of the people, right? And apart from that, it's like it is the feeling of carrying the book, that makes it special. It's like I don't think that you're gonna get that feeling when you carry a Kindle, for example, right? It's like Kindle is a smaller gadget, so yeah.
Didn't people say the same thing about like CDs and records in the past? They've mostly disappeared, haven't they?
Well, yeah, but I don't think the same is gonna happen with books.
Why not?
Well, there are a number of reasons. So first, let's consider the financial side. It's like when you print out, right? So you're certainly gonna get a lot of money just by printing because physical books cost much higher than ebooks. And apart from that, most people are still uh, into reading physical books
Okay, thank
since
you. Thank,
most
thank,
people may not have.
Azamat,
Sorry, sir.
Azamat, thank you. Let's move on and talk about books and children. Do you think it's important to make children interested in reading?
I do really think that it's of pivotal importance since making children interested in reading from an early age can actually help them in their later part. It's like when they become adults, they have to read a lot depending on their job. So for example, if they are going to make any research, right, they're gonna definitely be reading a lot. But even though they aren't going to make any research, let's say, they still need you know uh, cognitive nutrition, let's say, right? So that's really really important.
And why do some children think that reading books just isn't cool?
um I think it's because of a problem in their childhood. It's like parental problem, I would say, because it is parents at the end of the day who are responsible to make their children, love reading actually in general. So yeah, it's like because of parental lack of parental guidance, let's say some children may not always find reading books enjoyable.
Okay, thank you. That is the end of the test. All right. So, first of all, congratulations. You've survived. I know it's not the most comfortable thing to do in the world when you're recorded and people are watching you. For the audience, I will ask you just to put in what score you think Azamat deserves for this. Of course, if you want to write, what his stronger points are or any areas of improvement, feel free to do that. I will get to my scores in a moment. First of all, Azamat, I just want to ask you, firstly, how are you feeling and how do you feel about your own performance?
Well, to be honest, there is an echo. It's like I can hear myself. That does make the speaking way harder than I expected, and I'm literally struggling right now. It's like to kind of find my note. It was literally hard because of the technical problem.
Okay, why is there an echo? Is it because you're using two devices?
Yes.
Uh-huh. All right. So moving away from the tech problems, how do you feel about the questions, the topics? You kind of mentioned that you don't really like books in part two, and then I thought like, oh, maybe part three is going to be difficult because if you're not really into books, it can be difficult. Do you find it difficult to speak about subjects where you don't really have much of an interest in?
No, no, that was okay. I mean, I used to like reading books when I was still a schoolboy, but not anymore. It's like I think I mean I still love reading, but not books. I prefer reading articles these days.
Mhm.
Like
And as a, not just in this speaking test, but as a user of English in general, or as a speaker of English, what do you think are some of your strengths or some of your areas of improvement?
uh,
Do you
that's
feel
a
like
head
you're good at
scratcher.
grammar, good at pronunciation, good at fluency, good at vocab?
That's a head scratcher. I would say I have to work on my fluency. So, and I believe that it was really problematic during today's session with the echo making the things even worse. And so I think that's okay with grammar and pronunciation. Um, so, and I
Yeah, and
think
I
that's
don't
okay
mean
with lecture resource website.
I don't mean in this grammar in this speaking test exactly, just in general, right? So I'm a learner of many different languages and or not many, but I speak Russian and I know like I should improve some of my grammar, but I think my vocab and pronunciation is okay. I know I can speak Russian relatively quickly. I don't have, big problems speaking Russian if I need to use it. My Chinese, my grammar is kind of okay, my pronunciation is okay, but my vocab is just awful. I don't know basic words like park or road. There are so many basic words in Chinese that I don't know. And I just mean you as a English user. Do you feel like I guess you're continuing to study English in some way? Are there any areas you think that maybe you should be better at?
I think I should work on getting to know more and more things. It's like the word, I mean, the world, right, doesn't seem to stop developing. It's like, in fact, it's developing rapidly, and we have to keep up with the latest news. So, and most news are in English. So this makes, learning English quite problematic because you come across a lot of new words, new terms. For example, when I watch podcasts of Andrew Huberman, like neuroscientist, I mean, I literally cry because I can't understand what he's saying, right? And when I, for example, listen to Elon Musk, right, the same. I literally cry because they're using two specific terms. It's like, yeah, I think I have to work on my lexical resource a lot.
I cry when I listen to Elon Musk, but for different reasons. But let's have a look at what some of the viewers have said. So Rahmatilo says that you deserve a score of that you're C2. Mohammed, hi Hassan. I remember our speaking test together. Hassan says that you have a score of 7. Now he's changed it to 7.5. Let's have a look. They were a lot shum during speaking. Yeah, it happens. It's a normal part of speaking. When I speak, I have quite a few ums in my speech. It's not a big problem. Hassan again says, I have no trouble understanding him. Absolutely. Shok Jahan says 7.5. Brian, a very long-term friend of the channel, says, takes work to sift through this candidate's main point. Not to be harsh, but this is one situation where allowing your uncertainty to be part of the conversation can become an asset. Brian also made a point. Let's have a look. The attempt to produce good answers outstage conversational achievement to an extent. I kind of agree with that, and I will talk about that a little bit in a moment when I give my feedback. And Abrorbek says at least 8.0. Now, I will say that candidates who take IELTS one day, they might get 8.5. Another day, they might get 8.0. Another day, they might get 7.5. Another day, they might even get 7. There can be a range. Obviously, if you're being recorded, it's going to affect your score a little bit. And also, if you have a blooming echo in your voice, that's also going to affect the way that you connect your speech and the flow of your speech. But I want to just give a little bit of feedback, on some of your strengths and weaknesses and my own scores. And then we will go back to some questions, I guess, from our lovely chat people. Can you see my screen here?
Yes.
Cool. So for fluency and coherence, I'm actually going to lower it to a 7. I think in part because of the technical error, but for me, it was noticeable that your flow of speech was interrupted fairly regularly. I don't think you had a lot of like false starts where you started speaking, then you went back to the start of the sentence. But even in part 1, I noticed that the flow of speech wasn't quite there where it maybe could have been. In general, you stayed on topic. And showed a willingness to develop your answers. All of that's good. At times, it felt like there was maybe just a little too much padding. Now, you might not know what padding is. Hold on. So padding is when we say things like, oh, that's an interesting question, or before I talk about the book, before I delve into the subject, I just want to say blah, 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 where we kind of speak around the subject. Like if you ask me a question like, what sport do you like? I can say, oh, my favorite sport is football. I watch it like at least twice a week. And when I have free time, I play it with my friends. That's a direct answer. Padded answers are, and this is not how you spoke, but I want to give an extreme example of padding. What sport do you like? Oh, sport. That's a very interesting subject. I haven't thought about that actually. However, there are some people that really like talking about sport. Now, I guess I would say that my favorite sport is football, but I don't know because there are so many sports to choose from, and it's very difficult sometimes to find an answer, right? Where sometimes, I don't think you did this to a great extreme, but for me, that just, and I think Brian made that point that he says it takes work to sift through the candidate's main point, that sometimes it can be difficult to identify the direct answer. I certainly think this isn't a huge problem, and I think your fluency will improve once that tech issue disappears, once you don't have an echo. So I think, I could imagine you getting an 8 for fluency and coherence. Lexical resource, I'm between the 8 and the 9 for lexical resource. I think you have amazing vocab. You use a bunch of stuff like be of pivotal importance, and you talk about a roller coaster of emotion. You delving in, being engrossed in something, all of that good stuff. there are times where I feel like maybe you're just showing off a little bit too much with the vocab. And it's a difficult thing to balance because probably, it's a test, right? And in a test, your job as a candidate is to kind of show the examiner all of the good stuff that you want. But then you get all of this advice from people saying, like, speak naturally. And so sometimes it can be tricky. I'm going to go with 8 for lexical resource. So I'm going to put that your range is absolutely incredible, but at times it feels just a little like you are forcing this complex vocab. And for me, that's just enough to take it from that 9 to an 8. Like telling that difference between a 9 and an 8 can be very tricky sometimes. Grammatical range and accuracy, I'm also going to go with 8. I feel like your accuracy is better than your range. So your accuracy is almost perfect. I'm just looking at the notes that I've taken, and I don't even, there was maybe one where I was asking about your childhood, and you said, like, I've been given an opportunity to do something. And it's like, oh, I would use past simple here, not present perfect. Because when we talk about our childhood, we tend to use past simple. In my childhood, I was given an opportunity. Not in my childhood, I have been given an opportunity. So, just tiny errors in accuracy. So your accuracy is almost perfect apart from 1 or 2 minor errors. And I know it sounds horrible, but perhaps there is some room to show off a little more complex grammar. And I know it's a terrible thing, isn't it? That on the one hand, with your vocab, I'm saying, don't show off your vocab, you're trying too hard. And then with your grammar, I'm saying, try to show off more grammar. But when I think about the grammatical constructions you use, those are grammatical structures that we always teach at like B2. It's great that you're using like second conditional, things like this, use present perfect, continuous, that type of stuff is all good. But it feels very much like that grammar that we teach at B2. Now, C1 students are good at B2 grammar. B2 students are not. B2 students are terrible. But it feels like your grammar range is high C1, not quite C2. But still very strong. And pronunciation, I guess I have to go with the 8. So despite the tech errors, I feel like you do a good job. Good job at connecting your speech. Sometimes you sound a little shouty. Like you are trying to speak loud like this, but I know that that's because of the tech error, because you have that echo in your ear. Sometimes you sound a little shouty, but your intonation is all right. Nothing wrong with it. You have I think maybe I can just show this word. Can you read this word for me, Azamat?
Where is?
Again?
Where is?
Whereas.
Whereas.
And so, there are a couple of minor issues where I think well, maybe it's not quite the 9, because there were just a couple of words that maybe were mispronounced. I don't know. You said fell in love, but it sounded to me like you were saying felt in love. And I wasn't sure if that was a vocab problem or if it was a grammar problem or if it was a pronunciation problem. I felt in love, where it should be fall, fell, fallen. So a couple of minor words where I felt the pronunciation isn't quite right. But I think Hassan sums it up beautifully when he says it's very easy to understand you. And that's the easiest thing for any examiner to notice, is how much effort do I have to put into understanding this candidate? And with me, with your speaking, I can understand you effortlessly. It is very easy to understand your pronunciation. There are no real cases where I thought, what did he say? Whereas was one where I thought, he's saying whereas. I didn't need to think about it a lot. So pronunciation didn't get in the way of understanding. Could an examiner give you 7 for pronunciation? Yeah, they might feel like the shoutiness of your speech maybe didn't quite deserve an 8. But for me, you are around about that band 8. Now, we know IELTS is cruel because 7888 is not a score of 8 like it should be, but
Yes.
it gives you a score of 7.5. But keep many things in mind. Firstly, keep in mind that we are being recorded right now. Keep in mind that you have an echo in your voice. And also keep in mind that a different examiner might easily score you an 8. A different examiner might look at your vocab and say, yeah, he has a full range of vocab. I'm giving him a 9 for that. And so you might get an 8 overall. For me, you're just speaking to you, it feels like you are right on that border between C1 and C2. I think there are areas of your language that could improve. But yeah, right on the border between C1 and C2 for me. I'm going to go back to Azamat and ask him some questions. In the meanwhile, I'm going to ask if anyone has any questions or comments about my feedback. But I'll let those people ask those questions, and I'll go to you, Azamat. How do you feel about this result of 7.5? Do you feel like that's an underperformance for you, or is that like a typical performance for you?
Well, I guess that was an underperformance. So it's
How
like,
many have you taken IELTS before?
yes, many
How many
times.
times? What type of scores did you get before?
So overall or speaking?
Just for speaking.
So it ranges from 7 to 8.
Okay, so 7.5 is slightly under what you might expect.
Yeah, might be.
And did you get the breakdown when you got your? I imagine you're the type of person that requests the breakdown to
Yes.
see exactly what you get. Do you remember what you got in the speaking in the breakdown for each individual part?
In my last exam, so the breakdown was incorrect. So there were quadruple sevens, but my overall score was 7.5. It was like, okay.
How does that work?
I don't know. I have no idea.
So you got 7777, but the overall score 7.5.
Yeah, I guess that was a problem with processing the data, probably. But when I got 8 for speaking, I got 8, 8, 8, 9.
And what did you get 9 in? Vocabulary, lexical resource.
Pronunciation.
9 in pronunciation. Okay, so
Yeah.
it's maybe this echo is
Yeah,
affecting.
probably. Yes.
Interesting. And when are you planning to take the exam next time?
Very soon.
Can you be more specific? Next week,
I
in 2
guess
weeks, in a month, in 2 months?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. And what score are you hoping for? 8.5?
9.
Ooh.
I mean, overall 9. And speaking at least 8.5. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if on test day you turned up and got 8.5. If I was a betting man, if I had to put money on it, I would say you're probably going to get an 8, but certainly you might get an 8.5. But I also want to know, Azamat, if you have any thoughts or feelings or questions about the feedback that I gave. Maybe you think I'm wrong about something, or maybe you want to ask a question or go into more detail about something.
No, that was okay. Everything was okay. I was actually expecting, underperforming. It's like because of the big echo here, a big technical problem, I would say. I wasn't, confident while I was speaking, and which might have resulted in poor, performance.
All right, just looking at some other comments from people. Some people say that you deserve an 8. Another one says it's the same person, an 8.
Yes.
Someone says 7. So it seems, 7.58 seems to be the consensus. I did ask if anyone has any questions. I will just take a look at any questions that might be here. A lot of people asking, am I afraid of losing my job because of AI?
Yes.
No, I'm not. I absolutely love AI. I love testing ChatGPT. I've done a little bit of research on uh, these LLMs. No, I use it a lot in my lesson teaching. I think they're great. They're terrible at the moment at grading writing. You can use it to help you with writing, but if you're asking ChatGPT what your writing is, it will always tell you it's 5 or 6 or maximum 7. I've never got more than a 7 according to ChatGPT, not once in my life. Asatov says listening and reading is easier in real exam than the materials available on the internet. Is it true, Gilm? No, they are the same. But I kind of, in my experience, Asatov, it's an interesting thing. In my experience, my students have always done better in the real test than I thought that they would do than I thought that they would do. And they did better in the real test than they did in the practice tests. And many of my students have told me that, they were preparing for something difficult. And on the day, it turned out that it was easier. It shouldn't be. But it's interesting, Asatov, that you say this. As someone, Azamat, who's actually done the exam, what do you think about this idea that, like the Cambridge practice books, that the materials there are more difficult than the real ones on exam day? Would you agree with that?
Well, in fact, we don't have Cambridge books only. So there are a lot of materials right now, especially in the Uzbek IELTS community. We've got authentic reading and listening materials, like from the past exam papers, and students have been doing them and getting particularly high scores with listening and reading. For example, in my last attempt in December, I guess that was on 15th December, I got reading passage 3 that I had done before. It's like on a regular practice day. So it can be easier sometimes because of the availability, because of the abundance of the materials now.
Yeah, it's. I think the practice materials certainly help, and they really should be. The practice materials should be, at the same level as the test ones. Rahmatilo asks, do I want to become an IELTS examiner in the future? No, I have been offered the chance to do IELTS examining. I like the exams that I examine for, but I can't make content about that stuff, obviously, because you're not allowed to use your examiner status to kind of reveal secrets. So I don't really have a plan to be an IELTS examiner. And honestly, I think it would be a step down in my career if I was an IELTS examiner. But I have thought about doing it for 6 months or so, but not really. There's let's have a look. I have to deal with this question because I have to deal with this question all the time. For how many years are you working as an IELTS examiner? I am not working as an IELTS examiner. IELTS examiners cannot do this content. However, IELTS isn't the only international English exam, and I do work both as an examiner and as a quality assurance examiner. So my job is also to check other examiners to see that they are evaluating candidates appropriately. I have a very good record in terms of my accuracy as an examiner, but it's not for IELTS. I always have to make that clear, always. Yeah. And this is a question, Azamat, you might have an answer to this. Bro, I'm pro YouTube, or pro YouTuber says, I want to set for a mock. How, Azamat, might a person be able to get a mock exam maybe in the next few days?
So, just follow Glean's channel, Glean's Telegram channel, and on Saturday, on the coming Saturday, I guess that's going to be 5th April, we're going to be live again with another guest, with Brick from How to IELTS. So, and yeah, together here we'll be taking speaking mock from 2 lucky candidates. And those 2 lucky candidates will be selected randomly, just, from the chat. So if you really into, setting a mock, just wait for that moment and be active.
Yeah, and you actually don't have to be a member of my channel. You have to either be a follower of me, of Azamat, or of Brick on How to IELTS. We will select any viewer at random. Azamat is going to select the viewers at random from the live stream on Saturday. But of course, we will need some way to contact you, right? So if we select you, then we'll try to find out your name on one of our chats, and then we will contact you to give you the link to come up. But yeah, this Saturday, we're going to do a live stream, as Azamat says, and we're going to choose 2 lucky candidates to come up and perform some live speaking tests, just like Azamat has done today. I don't want to keep you here for too long, but I do want to ask you just a little bit about IELTS in Uzbekistan. Now, one thing I've noticed is that candidates for IELTS in Uzbekistan seem to be getting younger and younger. And I've had some cases where 16 and 15-year-olds take IELTS. I remember there was a famous story of one girl in Kazakhstan who was like 15 or 16 or something and got like a band 9, and she
17.
was super proud. 17. There you go. She's like a superhero. Firstly, why is IELTS so popular in Uzbekistan right now? And do you feel like the exam is suitable for people who are 14, 15?
So in fact, the youngest, let's say, 8 holder in Uzbekistan was born, I guess, in 2012. So that must be 14-year-old lady, so girl. I mean, not 14, but 13, right? Well,
Well,
yeah,
it depends when she was born.
it's like younger than little sister, you know, and she got 8. That's pretty impressive. And we've got IELTS mania or IELTS pandemic, whatever you can call it, in Uzbekistan, particularly in Tashkent, the capital of Uzbekistan. And a lot of candidates are, taking the test over and over again until they get a particular score, for example, 8, let's say, right? And I think the reason why, candidates are getting younger and younger, it's like 13, 12, right? We even got 12-year-old, 11-year-old guys who got 7. It's like literally, can you imagine it? Yeah. I mean, I'm really interested what they have come up with, in their writing. It's like, imagine getting a finance question in task 2, right? What are you going to write? Let's imagine having a political, or let's say some sort of political topic. What are you going to write? So that's very interesting.
Yeah, I think like how would I, as an 11-year-old, if somebody had asked me like how can governments encourage people to recycle more? I wouldn't have an answer to that. I'd probably, pee my pants and run away. And that, as an
Yeah.
L1 user, I don't know. It's really incredible. Now,
Yes.
some exams, I don't know if you know, like Cambridge First, Cambridge Advanced, they have like exams for schools. And I always thought maybe IELTS should introduce this like IELTS for schools type of exam, because, a lot of questions are like, what did you do in your childhood? And if you're 13, it's like, well, I am in my childhood. Like some of the
Yes.
questions are just really not suitable for those 13-year-olds. But I don't want to ask all of the questions. I am very interested in IELTS in Uzbekistan, because I got a lot of viewers from Uzbekistan in the last month or so, and it's kind of wild the status of IELTS, but we will keep some of this back for Saturday. We will ask some more of those questions on Saturday. I was hoping to run for just, about an hour. We've been going for 53 minutes. I will ask anyone, if anyone has any other questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat now. I'm going to ask Azamat one more question, and then I'm going to answer any other questions before we leave. So, Azamat, what benefit do you bring to the IELTS learning community on your Telegram channel? Do you offer candidates like, I don't know if you teach any lessons or if you do any writing checks yourself or if you give any pieces of advice? Like, what are your goals with your IELTS Telegram channel? And why should people follow you?
Well, I used to have live lessons on my Telegram channel, and I'm planning to, you know, start them again. I guess after my exam, probably after 2 weeks. And apart from that, I tend to write some advice about, let's say, learning process, how to improve particular aspects. It's like listening, reading, right? It's
Just
like
one
how
moment.
to,
Keep talking to the audience. I need to switch on my light because it's getting dark here and my camera's down. But keep speaking. Keep telling them
yeah,
what you're
okay.
doing.
Uh-huh. So, and then working on writing, how to love what you're doing, right? And how to love what you're reading. And again, how to improve their speaking, and the role of casual speaking when you're really into, improving your speaking, and so on and so forth.
All right, I'm going to jump back. I'm going to answer a couple of questions. Is your evaluation quite accurate? Yeah, a couple of on my accuracy, I did make a video talking, I collect statistics. Every candidate that I check, I get back in contact with them and ask them, like, what did you get in the real test? And then I check. Now, what I see from the comment section is that people tell me that I'm too generous. They say, oh, that person is not a band 8 or that person is not a band 7. They deserve a lower score. What we find is that most candidates after the mock test actually get a higher score than what I give them. I think it's something like 50% I get the score exactly right, 40% get a higher mark, 10% get a lower mark. I also, in my job as an examiner, I got statistics back recently that said that about 99%. They said between 0 and 1% of my marks for this one test was slightly off, but still within tolerance. So 99% accuracy in one of the jobs. In the other one, I have an accuracy rating, again, nothing out of tolerance, so nothing like very wrong. And in that one, I have about 80% exactly correct, maybe about 15% slightly too generous and 5% too harsh. So my scores are accurate. It's my job to be accurate. It's my job also to check that other examiners are accurate. But still, there is always a subjective element to checking speaking and writing. When I first started examining, I was very harsh. I was very much like, nah, that's a B1. There's no way that is higher than a B1. No way at all. I had to learn to become more generous because at the beginning I was very strict and very harsh with my marking. Maybe after 3 to 4 years, children will be born with IELTS 7 in Uzbekistan. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
This is one. What should I do? I don't have an idea for answering examiners' questions, especially in part 3. I want to make a video on this problem of idea generation. For me, again, IELTS is aimed at people who are ready to take higher education. Now, if you're ready to take higher education, IELTS makes the conclusion that you should have opinions about world topics. You should have opinions about, why do people care about the environment, or why is it important for children to read books? But I want to make a whole video on this. I will go to you, Azamat. Do you have any answer to Rahmatil 007? How to find ideas in part 3?
I guess they have to immerse themselves in English in the learning process. They have to learn more and more. That's it.
Yeah, I think you mentioned something earlier about reading the news, and I was actually planning on making a book because quit one of my jobs because I have quite a few jobs. I quit one of my jobs, and I was thinking about making a book on, like, a book on these IELTS Part 3 topics. But I am going to make a video on idea generation. And I'll take this question to Chris. IELTS Advantage always says that using simple words and simple ideas, says that with using it is possible to get high scores in speaking, like 7.58. Agree? Yeah. If they're simple topic specific words, right? So if we're talking about like going on holiday, I don't know, take photos, go sunbathing, I don't know, stay at a hotel, all you can eat breakfasts, something like this. Yeah, simple topic specific language is definitely enough for 7.5 to an 8. There is something in the criteria that talks about like idiomatic language, but a lot of English language is idiomatic. Even things like get up in the morning, that's idiomatic. Even things like turn my TV off, that's a piece of idiomatic language. When we talk about idiomatic language, we don't mean like the grass is always greener on the other side, or I like to unwind and let my hair down after a difficult day's work. It can just be like a phrasal verb or something like this. There are lots more questions. We always get this question. I can answer it, Azamat, every single time. Have you worked as an IELTS speaking examiner? No. IELTS examiners are not allowed to make this type of content for IELTS. I don't make content about the exams that I examine for because I am not allowed to, in the same way that IELTS examiners can't make this type of content. But it doesn't matter how many times I say it, this will always be the question that I get asked. And I think I will have to leave it there. I know some people had some other questions. Keep in mind, we will be back on Saturday with a bit more of a Q&A. I'll give you the last word, Azamat. Anything you want to say to our lovely audience before we disappear?
Well, don't forget to join us on 5th April.
That's a nice way to end it. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming on as a guest, Azamat. Thank you all for your questions. If we didn't get around to you, sorry, but feel free to post questions on Saturday. I might do another live stream where I just do Q&A if you have questions. More stuff coming your way soon. Feel free to join Azamat on AN IELTS. There is a link to that in my Telegram channel. As always, if you want to take part in my mock tests, speaking tests, writing checks, and so on, Expert Examiner is the channel. It's on Telegram. A link is given in the description. But thanks again, Azamat, and to everyone, thank you very much. Have a great evening, and we will see you all again very soon.